Hello guys, you are welcome to my classroom. Today, our discussion is going to be focused on budgeting in the public sector. Our attention will be purely based on Nigeria. At the end of this lecture, the listener should be able to have a clear understanding of the meaning of budget and budgeting. Identify the key objectives of budgeting, identify and explain the various types of budgeting, as well as explain the budgetary process in Nigeria. Also, they should be able to identify the key problems facing budgeting in Nigeria, as well as provide solutions to identify problems. I welcome you to my classroom, and I wish you a happy stay. Thank you. So let us begin with some conceptual clarification. Let's start with the concept of budget, and let us see how it differs from the concept of budgeting. A budget can be defined as an estimate of income and expenditure for a set period of time, and it is usually compiled and re-evaluated on periodic basis. Budget is basically a financial plan for a defined period, usually 1 year. So it is a systematic design and plan for all the estimates of income and expenditure of government, with the ultimate intention of directing, coordinating, and controlling the monetary commitments of the state towards the attainment of stated goal. So basically, the budget is a financial statement showing proposed income and proposed expenditure of government for a period of 1 year. On the other hand, the concept of budgeting involves or is a process of mobilizing, allocating, managing, and controlling resources of the state. So it is a process of creating a plan to spend the given financial resources of government. So budgeting as a concept is therefore a process of preparing a detailed statement of financial results that are projected for a specified period, usually 1 year. So in other words, budgeting can simply be captured as the process of creating a budget. So this means that the budget is simply a financial statement, a financial plan of government, while budgeting is the process it takes to prepare such financial documents. So types of budget. Budget can be classified into two broad categories. These are the balanced budget and the unbalanced budget. The balanced budget is a budget in which government receipts is equal to its expenditure. In other words, the expenditure side balance off with the revenue side. While on the other hand, unbalanced budget is one in which the government receipts and expenditure are not equal. So in this case, if it's unbalanced, it means it could either be a surplus in which the government receipt is more than its expenditure, or it could be a deficit in which its expenditure is greater than its receipt. So when the expenditure is greater than its receipt, that means there will be need for budget financing, for the deficit financing, which can lead to the issue of public debt. So public debt can be incurred in order to finance the deficit created from this unbalanced budget. Functions of budget. Budget perform numerous functions in the economy, but I will just categorize them into 6 basic functions: allocation, control, coordination, performance evaluation, planning, and communication. So the budget can be used as an instrument of allocating resources to various sectors of the economy. So if you look at the budget, you are going to see various amount of money that the government is allocating to various sectors. So the preferred sector, the favored sector, normally get the lion's share. So it shows clearly how resources are allocated to various sectors of the economy. Then the budget can also be used as a control mechanism over revenue and expenditure items. So for the budget, we can easily see what the expenditure the government wants to incur and how the revenue can be generated. So this will form a form of control, because when the expenditure is going out of hand, then of course the budget shows that you are spending beyond the budget. So the budget clearly identifies how much you can spend for a particular sector at a point in time and how that money is generated. So it's used to control expenditure and revenue. Then it's also an instrument for coordinating financial activities of various departments of government. Periodically, you're going to see that the Ministry of Finance, who is at the anchor in budgeting, trying to see what various sectors of the economy is doing in relation to their financial activities. Then it's also an instrument for performance evaluation. Budget normally provide the basis for measuring performance of various departments, ministry or agencies of government. Then the budget is also an instrument of planning. Actually, the budget is an action plan. It's a plan in which we match the resources of the government with its expenditure. So from the budget, we can plan for a period of 1 year. This is how much we can spend, and this is how we are going to generate such amounts that are going to be spent for a period of 1 year. So it's a plan document. It's an instrument of short-term planning. That's what we normally call it, the action plan of government. Because this is the plan where expenditure is actually matched with the revenue of government. Then lastly, it is used to communicate decisions taken to all relevant authorities. We are going to see that when we are discussing budgetary process. So you may, as a manager of a particular agency or department, suggest that this is what I want to do. This is how much I want to spend for a period of 1 year. But the budget that is approved will tell you how much you are permitted to spend at a particular point in time for a period of 1 year. So let us assess ourselves on what we have learned with this self-assessment exercise. So here we have two simple questions. One, what is a budget? How is it different from budgeting? And two, highlight the key functions of a budget. If you can answer these questions effectively, it means we are following. Now let us examine the various approaches to budgeting. We have about 7 different approaches outlined here. We are going to take them one after the other. The first one there is line item budgeting. The line item budgeting is one in which the individual financial statement items are grouped by categories. It shows the comparison between the financial data for the current period against those of the immediate past periods. So if you look at most of our government budget of maybe budget of 2021, you see it being compared item by item with budget of 2020. This is an approach called the line item budgeting. Then we also have the performance-based budgeting. This is a systematic use of performance information to form budget decisions. It provides information on what the agencies have done or expected to do with the money provided for them. This means this approach, in addition to allocating funds to various agencies or departments, It also describes the amount of services or activities that such agencies should provide with the funds. So it adds performance, the expected performance of the agency with the amount that has been allocated to the agency or departments. Then we also have the program budget. The program budget focuses on the services to be provided by the departments and budget funds according to the functions. So it shows the purpose for which the money will be spent and the importance the government attach or the importance that government place on these specific functions. So this is a kind of approach that zero in on the program itself, the activities that the agency or the department or ministry wants to carry out in the period, in the planned or budgeted period. Then we also have the zero-based budgeting. This is a way of budgeting in which the budget is prepared in alignment with the stated goals. The zero-based budget, which I call the ZBB, the exercise starts from zero basis. That is, all the elements of budgeting must be justified for every period of budgeting. So if we are including an item in this year's budget, the justification must be there for inclusion of such an item. It is not based on what was in the past budget. So it is basically made from the scratch. That's why we call it zero-based budget. Every item to be included are justified by the officers, including that element in the budget. Then we also have priority-based budgeting. It is a budgeting that evaluates the relative importance of individual programs and services rather than the entire department. It is distinguished by prioritizing the programs a government provide or government unit provide according to various items. The important ones are considered first, while expenditure is cut down on the other. In other words, the expenditure to be included in the budget are prioritized according to the importance attached to each of these items by the government. Then we also have the outcome-based budgeting. This is the process of developing a budget based on the link or relationship between funding and expected results. It is a tool for measuring developmental outcome of all governmental programs. So the focus here is not the amount that is going to be spent, but what is the outcome that is going to be benefited or that is going to be derived from such a venture of expenditure. Then the last one is the gender responsive budgeting. This is a budgeting system that works for everyone, woman, man, girl, boy, by ensuring that gender equitable distinction of resources are ensured and by contributing to equal opportunity for all. So this type of budget system is a budget system that tries to bring in the issue of gender in the distribution of resources of the state, so that in such a manner that no particular gender is deprived or have the feeling of being deprived. So when we are carrying out any specific project based on this budgeting system, the end beneficiary, the gender, will be considered. Whether it's general or is for the male or for the female, they are taken into consideration in planning this kind of budget. Now let us turn our attention to the characteristics of public budgets. The public budgets have the following characteristics. One, it is prepared for a definite future period of time. Usually, the government annual budget is for a period of 1 year. 2, it is prepared in advance and it is based on future plan of action. That means next year budget will begin to plan for it now. So it's a futuristic term. 3, it is prepared in monetary terms. So everything we are budgeting for is expressed in monetary value. At the end of the day, it have a complete size in monetary terms. 4, it passes through a budgetary process established by law. This is what we normally refers to as the budgetary cycle, which we are going to see later. So each budget for the government must pass through this process. It's enshrined in the law, and before you can actually call it a budget, it needs to have completed the cycle before it can be called a budget. Then 5, lastly, planned expenditure is matched with anticipated revenue. So if you are budgeting for any item, you must also include where you can get the amount to finance such a budget expenditure. So each budget document, the expenditure is matched with the anticipated revenue. If your expenditure is more than the revenue, like we have seen before, it is a deficit. You must also be able to state how such deficit will be financed. Now, what are the underlying principles of budgeting? Upon which principle are budgeting based? So here, we have learned about 6 basic principles of budgeting, which are clarity, comprehensiveness, regularity, accuracy, publicity, and adequacy. So these are the principles upon which a budget is based. Clarity simply means that the budget should be clear and simple to understand by all. So you don't need to be highly educated before you can read a public budget. It should be expressed in simple terms, in a clear language that everybody will understand. Then 2, comprehensiveness. The budget should cover all necessary financial estimates that the government intends to work with in the planned period. So it's a comprehensive document showing every expenditure of government. So there is no way that government could spend, according to law, that government should spend any amount, no matter how little, outside the budget. That becomes extra budgetary spending, which is illegal and can be charged for misappropriation of fund. So the budget should be comprehensive enough to cover all such expenses of government. Then regularity means that the budget should be presented at a time suitable to go alongside the beginning of every fiscal year and end at the specified period. So normally, if the financial year or the fiscal year is January, the budget should be ready for January and run through December. Depends on the period that the fiscal year starts for each country. Then accuracy. This means that the figures in the budget should be correctly estimated and stated. So there should be no room for error in terms of computational error. It should be accurate, it should be well checked to be error proof. Then publicity means that the budget should be made available to every citizen. So this principle is very clear that every citizen have the right to see the budget in details and should be put in public domain for everybody to see and monitor. Then adequacy. This means that the budget should be to a reasonable extent adequate to cater for the needs of government and its citizens. Here we are saying reasonably to some extent because we know that it is not actually possible for all needs to be met in one single budget. But at least the pressing needs should be catered for in the budget document. Now let us look at the budgetary process in Nigeria. The budgetary process is normally called the budget cycle. That is the process, the stages that the budget passes through from conception even after implementation. So there are different stages that the budget must pass through, and each stage is handled by a specific government agency identified by the Constitution. So in Nigeria, under our democratic dispensation, we have 4 basic stages that the budget passes through. So the first stage is the preparation and submission. Each department, each ministry or government agencies, they prepare their own proposal, their intended expenditure and revenue, and submit to the executive committee. Normally, the Federal Ministry of Finance, they anchor this aspect of the function. So each of them submit and they defend their proposal before the Executive Council. The Executive Council can fine-tune, make adjustments here and there in line with current reality. And if they are okay with the submission, they can now package it together as a single document, which is now taken to the next stage. So this stage is performed by the executive arm of government. Then the next stage, after it has been agreed in the executive committee, the next stage is appropriation and legal authorization. This is normally carried out by the legislative arm of government. At the federal level, the National Assembly, members of the House of Rep and Senate, they are the ones that are in charge of the appropriation and legal authorization of the proposal of or the appropriation bill as submitted by the head of the executive, which is the president. In the state, the governor submit to the House of Assembly. So at the legislative arm, the government, now the president, in the case of Nigeria here, submits such appropriation to a joint session of the House of Rep and Senate. And these documents are now referred to the budget committee of the House, and they scrutinize the various sections of this document. Most often, they also invite the head of the various ministries, departments, and agencies to defend their proposal. After the adjustments and others have been made, then they cannot collate together and it is passed by the House as approved. Then it is still not called a budget because it has to be sent to the president in the case of federal, or to the governor in the case of the state, for his assent. It is when the president or the governor respectively have appended their signature that it now becomes a budget. However, there are some issues. Supposing while the legislative arm were carrying out their legal authorization and some of the departments' budget are tampered with, the president have the right to withhold assent. Maybe he's not happy with the alteration, he can withhold assent. And once he withholds assent, that means the document will be referred back to the legislative arm to review their stand. So these are what we call check and balances in the system. So if the legislative arm is in line with the president, they can revert their decision. But if they are still standing by their own action, then they have the right to veto the president withdrawal of assent. And this is done if they are able to get to third majority of the House. If they're able to get the third majority of the House, they can override the president's veto, and automatically the appropriation bill becomes a law. But if they cannot get to third majority, then the president's veto stands. So these are the powers of the legislator and the power of the executive. But once the budget has been passed into law, then it is now moved for implementation. And the implementation is now done by the various government department agencies and ministries coordinated by the Federal Ministry of Finance. So they are the ones that actually execute the projects. However, after the project has been executed or during implementation, there's what we call post-implementation audit or evaluation. Periodically, this is done, can be done by evaluation, can be done even by the House quarterly to get briefing to see whether the various provisions of the law is being followed. The audit department also have to look at the implementation, whether proper accounting procedures have been followed. So these are the budgetary process in Nigeria. So every agency of government, they have their own function, they have their role to play in the budget preparation. So let us look at the issue of budgetary control. Why or how is the budget being controlled? So the budgetary control is a technique whereby the actual income and expenditure of government are compared with budgeted figures to ascertain deviations, if any, and make necessary corrections. So when there are deviations, the explanation are being sorted to know why such deviations occur and how they can be corrected. This is the control technique. So there are various steps taken in budgetary control, and this include one, establishment of a budget for each activity or sector. So each activity of government or each sector of the economy, a budget is made for it. And at the end of the budget period, measurement of actual performance is carried out. So what is the budgetary position and what is the actual performance? So the third step is to compare the actual performance with the budgeted amount to find out the variance, if any. So at times you are going to see that the budget performance is low, at times even as low as 30% to 40% or so. So why should we budget 100 million and we are only able to actualize 20 million? So this is comparison. So there must be a comparison between the actual performance and the actual budget. Then when you see that there is a variance, there is a deviation, then they should be able to give reasons for such variance. That is the ascertainment of reasons for such variances if they exist. So after knowing the reasons, then the last stage is to take suitable remedial actions. So these are ways of controlling the budget to see that the budget is actually being followed, that there should be very little deviation from such budgets. So now, why is budgetary control necessary? What are the objectives that they intend to achieve through budgetary control? So this brings us to the issue of key objectives of budgetary control. So there are a lot of objectives that the government wish to achieve through budgetary control. One is defining the objective of government. So you should be able to be able to know the objective, the direction that the government is going. Two, providing plans for achieving the objective of government. So if we are able to establish or ascertain the objective, then we should be able to make adequate plans towards achieving those objectives. So without controlling the budget, you may not be able to achieve the objective. Then three, coordinating the activities of various ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs. Then four, operating various ministry, departments, and agencies economically and efficiently. So you can only administer or operate these various agencies efficiently, economically, if you put a very good, solid control mechanism in place. So one of the key objectives of the control measure is to be able to operate government in the most efficient manner. And four, the objective there is to eliminate waste from the system. A good control measure is targeted at eliminating waste so that we may be able to reduce wasteful expenditure as much as possible. Another key objective is to centralize the control system. Centralizing the control system will also help you to be more efficient, more economically viable, more economically efficient in carrying out government functions. And lastly, correcting variance from set target and standard. When you have set your objective, you have set your target, the control measure will help you to control deviations, variances from such target. So at the end of the day, you'll be able to hit your target and achieve your objective. Once again, let us pause for a while and examine ourselves with this self-assessment exercise. There are two questions there again. One is highlight the basic principle of budgeting, and two, explain the meaning of budgetary control. And now let us examine the problem facing budget implementation in Nigeria. As you are aware, the budget performance in Nigeria is low. What are actually the challenges? Why are we having low budget performance in Nigeria? One of the clear reasons is uncertainty about the financial resources to execute budget. As you are aware, Nigeria economy is a monoculture economy depending majorly on oil, government source of revenue. And these prices of oil are not actually within the control of the Nigerian government. So we depend on the price as established by the international market. So volatility in the international oil price makes resources uncertain. So when Nigerian is planning budget, they have to just choose a benchmark for oil price. But at times you discover that the oil price may fall below that benchmark. And once the oil price falls below that benchmark, then there will be problem in executing most of portion or sections of the budget. Then two, there is lack of clear-cut objective on the part of Nigerian states. Actually, since the demands of the national development planning in the early 1970s, Nigerian budget has been prepared with bogus and high-sounding slogans such as budget of consolidation, budget of transformation, budget of change. These are slogans, but they have no clear-cut objective enshrined in the budget. Then three, lack of transformational ideology. There is actually lack of national ideology in focus. And as such, there's no ideology underlining or underpinning annual budgets. Hence, there is actually no thinking about the future. Each budget will just stand on its own. Then four, improper costing of budget items. So discover that due to continuous inflationary pressure, prices do change. And those planning the budget, most often, they underestimate, they undercost some of the budget items. So when it's not time for implementation, it becomes difficult to actually implement such budget items. Then we also have the problem of ambitious revenue projections. Discover that we tend to project expenditure to be very large so that our expenditure can accommodate most of our bogus demand. So when we now over project the revenue and the revenue is not coming forth to execute such projects, become unrealistic. So that is why I also have the problem of unrealistic budget. Most of our budgets are just bogus, very beautiful with high slogans, but the basic ingredients to make it workable are not there. The revenue are over-bloated, the expenditure are over-bloated, but at the end of the day, with the available resources, particularly with the dwindling resources, then most of perception of the budget will not be implementable. Hence, we call them unrealistic. There was one of the problem of extra budgetary spending by some government agencies. At times, you discover that a lot of expenditure are made outside the actual budget. So this again is a problem in Nigeria planning system. Then late budget preparation and approval. There are cases where budget approval even come close to 5-6 months into the new fiscal year. So at the end of the day, implementing such budget becomes very, very almost impossible. Then there is lack of adequate monitoring. The monitoring mechanism in Nigerian budget system is at the lowest ebb. So because of that, most sections of the budget are not executed the way it ought to be. They will also have non-inclusion of adequate economic and financial experts in the budgetary process to accurately forecast economic variables. So you see, budget is a futuristic activity. It is based on forecasts and projections. And these are carried out by experts, economic experts, financial experts, but most of them are not included in the budget preparation. Hence, we have improper costing, improper projection of budget items. Then lastly, lack of transparency and accountability. Popularly, we normally call this one the Nigerian factor. It's always there in most of the issues when we are addressing Nigeria issue. Corruption, lack of transparency, poor accountability system, and others. So these are some of the basic challenges facing budget implementation in Nigeria. So having identified some of the key challenges facing budgeting or budget implementation in Nigeria, what are the way out? What are the possible solutions to these problems? From our point of view, these are some of the solutions I'm recommending. One, a more transparent, effective, and inclusive budgetary process should be developed. Two, proper supervision of project implementation should be carried out. If the supervision is well conducted, then projects will be well implemented. Then feasibility and usefulness of projects be ascertained before including the project. So we don't just include projects in the budget just because of selfish interest or because of some political consideration. Such projects are just included. For a project to be budget to be workable, the projects that are identified to be included should be feasible and useful. So there should be a feasibility study, feasibility report on projects before they are included, and the usefulness of such projects before they are included in the budget. Then 4, early preparation and approval of budget should be encouraged. At least let the budget be ready before the next financial or fiscal year commences. Then more economic and financial experts be included in the budget process. This is to boost the projections in our economic variables. So when these experts are included, they will be able to carry out adequate costing, adequate forecasting of economic variable and make the budget to be more realistic. Then extra budgetary spending should be discouraged in its entirety. So these are some possible solutions that I'm putting forward to solving some of the problems facing the Nigerian budgetary system. So far, we have been able to examine various aspects of budget and budgeting in Nigeria. We have been able to distinguish between a budget and budgeting. We have seen various types of budgets. We have seen the approaches to budgeting. We have looked at budgetary control. We have looked at the budget cycle in Nigeria. And we also went further to look at budgetary control. We looked at the various challenges facing budgeting in Nigeria, as well as we profile some recommendations. So I will leave you with this assignment. There are about 3 questions here. For those that are my students, I expect them to submit this before the next class. We have the first question, which is explain the various approaches to budget as budget, explaining the merit and demerit of each. Another questions. So this will help you to get a clearer understanding of the Nigerian budgetary system. And for my students, I will want to get the response to these questions in the before the next class. Thank you very much for your time. Till I come your way in my next lecture series, I wish you a pleasant day. Thank you and goodbye.